So, let's talk about Florida. You've seen the pictures, right? The sun, the beaches, the endless opportunities. It's been pitched as the American dream for decades. But underneath all that sunshine, a different story is unfolding. A story of a relentless financial squeeze that's hitting people hard from Miami to the Panhandle. Today, we're going to peel back the layers. We're going to look past the glossy brochures and get into the real numbers, the human impact, and the downright confusing signals the market is sending. What is really going on in the Sunshine State?
It really all boils down to one number. Just look at that for a second. 55%. Let that sink in. This isn't a stock that went up or the price of a fancy car. This is a massive surge over just 5 short years in a cost that is absolutely fundamental to your life, the cost of just keeping the roof over your head.
And that's what this is, a 55% explosion in what Florida homeowners are forced to pay for property taxes and homeowners insurance. Now, these are not optional, nice-to-have things. These are the non-negotiable carrying costs of owning a home. And get this jump is the second highest in the entire nation. Only Colorado has seen a bigger spike. This one statistic, this single number, is the ground zero for an affordability crisis that is fundamentally changing what it means to live in Florida.
Which brings us to the big question, the one we're really here to unpack. For so long, Florida was the place you went for a better, more affordable life. But when the basic costs of shelter are skyrocketing this fast, is that promise still real? Or is the dream slowly, quietly, turning into a financial nightmare for millions? We're going to dig deep into that. Before we jump in, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and check out the links in the description if you're looking for a real estate agent in your market or you need life insurance. My team and I can help you anywhere, nationwide.
All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to break this down into 6 key parts to really get our arms around it. First, we'll dive deeper into this affordability crisis. Then, we'll expose the hidden costs that are catching so many people by surprise. From there, we'll look at the human toll this is taking. We'll try to make sense of the market's mixed signals, analyze a single real-world sale that tells a wild story. And finally, we'll talk about how to navigate this new reality. Let's get into it.
Okay, so let's get back to that jaw-dropping 55%. You have to understand, this isn't just a problem for people buying multi-million-dollar homes on the beach. Not at all. This is a pressure wave that's washing over the entire state. It's hitting everyone. The first-time buyer who scraped together every penny they had, and the retiree who's lived in their home for 30 years and thought they were set for life.
And make no mistake, this isn't just a homeowner problem. Think of it like a shockwave. The homeowners feel it first, directly, when those tax and insurance bills come due. But that shockwave doesn't stop there. It travels right on down to the renters. See, a lot of landlords are just regular people, small investors maybe. And when their costs go up 55%, what choice do they have? They have to try and pass that cost along in the form of higher rent. Now, in some areas like Northport, where there's a glut of rentals right now, they're having a hard time doing that, which squeezes them. But the overall pressure is undeniable. When it costs more to own, it's going to cost more to rent. Everybody gets squeezed.
All right, this next part, this is absolutely crucial. This is how this whole crisis sneaks up on people and catches them completely off guard. We have to talk about a huge misunderstanding, a myth, really, that has left so many homeowners feeling blindsided by the one thing they thought was stable, their fixed-rate mortgage. To get this, we have to talk about something called escrow. Now, I know it sounds like a boring bank term you can just ignore on your statement, but right now in Florida, that's a massive mistake. The simplest way to think about it is this. It's a separate little savings account your mortgage company manages for you. Every month, a chunk of your payment goes into that account, and the bank uses that money to pay your property taxes and your insurance bills. It's supposed to be convenient, but in a market this crazy, it's become the weapon that delivers these massive payment shocks.
Now this slide right here is the whole ballgame. It's one of the biggest misconceptions in all of personal finance. We're all told, get a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage and you'll have stability. Your payment will never change. Well, that's just not true. It's a myth. Only one part of your payment is fixed, the principal and interest on your loan. The other part, the escrow part for taxes and insurance, that's a total wild card. It can change every single year. So when those costs jump 55%, the bank just recalculates, and suddenly your fixed monthly payment can shoot up by hundreds or even thousands of dollars a year. Let me say it again, because it's that important. Your total monthly payment is not fixed.
And this is where things get really, really dangerous. Just look at this quote. It zeroes in on the people at the highest risk, recent buyers. Think about the folks who bought in that frenzy back in 2022 and 2023. Remember that catchy little phrase everyone was using? Date the rate, marry the house? It meant, hey, don't worry about the high price or the high interest rate. Just buy the house and you can refinance later when rates come down. Well, guess what? Rates haven't really come down. So these folks are already stretched to their absolute limit. And now you throw a 55% increase in their taxes and insurance on top of it? It's not just an inconvenience. For some families, that's the blow that could knock them right over the financial edge.
So, we've gone through the mechanics of how this is all happening. But numbers on a spreadsheet only tell half the story. Now we need to talk about the real-world impact. We need to look at the human cost. Because behind these percentages and escrow accounts, there are real people, real families, whose lives are being turned upside down.
So who's bearing the brunt of this? Well, it's a wider group than you might think. We've already talked about the recent buyers who are on a financial knife's edge, but then you've got the retirees, people on a fixed income. Their Social Security check might go up a tiny bit each year, but that's nothing compared to a 55% surge in housing costs. But maybe the most tragic group is the long-time homeowners. People who have their house paid off. They did everything right, they're mortgage-free, they should be the most secure people in the world. But they're not. They're just as exposed to these tax and insurance hikes. And of course, you have the backbone of Florida's economy, the people working in service jobs, in retail, in tourism. They're getting priced out of living anywhere close to where they were.
If you want one story that just puts a face on this whole crisis, this is it. An elderly couple, 87 and 93 years old. They owned their home free and clear. For years, they had achieved the American dream. They were supposed to be enjoying their golden years in peace. Instead, the cost of just paying the taxes and insurance on their own home became too much. It became this unbearable weight on their fixed income, and they had to sell. They were forced out of the home they loved. That's not just a statistic, that is a tragedy.
Now, with all this financial pain and all these heartbreaking stories, you would expect the real estate headlines to be screaming crash, right? You'd expect doom and gloom. But that's not exactly what's happening. Instead, if you try to follow the Florida market, what you get is a storm of confusing, contradictory signals. It's almost impossible to know if the market is booming or on the verge of busting.
So, on one hand, you get data like this. Exhibit A for the Florida is still booming argument. It's the annual U-Haul survey. It's simple. They track how many of their one-way rental trucks are coming into a state versus how many are leaving. And year after year, it seems to show Florida is the #1 destination. The headlines read, "Everyone is moving to Florida." It paints a picture of unstoppable demand.
But then, almost on the same day, you'll see this, Exhibit B. A completely different report, this time from Realtor.com, looking at their own mountain of data on where people are looking to move. And suddenly, Florida is nowhere to be found. It's not even in the top 10. So what's the truth? Is everybody moving in or not? You can see why people trying to make a decision are just throwing their hands up in confusion.
So what's actually happening? Well, as usual, the truth isn't in either of the headlines. It's what people on the ground are seeing every day. And if you ask anyone who lives there, they'll tell you one thing for sure. The people are here. The traffic is proof of that. The state is packed. The real shift isn't in the number of people. It's in the psychology of the buyer. The frantic, fear of missing out energy from the pandemic, that's gone. It's been replaced by a much more patient, wait-and-see approach. There are tons of buyers, many with cash, just sitting on the sidelines. They're waiting for the right house at the right price. They can buy, but they're choosing to wait. And as we get into a real-world case study of what that means, I want to remind you to like, share, and subscribe. And check out the links in the description if you're looking for a real estate agent in your market or you need life insurance. My team and I can help you anywhere nationwide.
Okay, so let's zoom in. I mean, way in. Let's go from this confusing 30,000-foot view of the market down to a single house on a single street. We're going to look at a recent sale on Susie Street in Punta Gorda Isles because this one transaction perfectly illustrates all these forces at play. This is where the theory hits the pavement.
So this house was basically the perfect example of what does sell in this market. It was an updated waterfront home. It had all the stuff buyers want, a new roof, new AC, hurricane protection, a modern kitchen. It was move-in ready. And the sellers were smart. They priced it aggressively at $850,000. And the result? It was like a firecracker one-off. It was under contract in one single day. You can bet they had multiple offers, probably a bidding war. This proves that for the right product at the right price, those patient buyers will jump off the sidelines in a second. So, looks like a great story for the seller, right? A quick, profitable sale. But this is where the story takes a wild turn. See, the sellers bought this home 20 years ago for $720,000. They just sold it for $850,000. So on paper, that's a gross gain of $130,000. Sounds okay. But the most important number on this slide isn't the price, it's the timeline. 20 years. Let's break that down.
$130,000 on a $720,000 investment over 20 years comes out to a gross appreciation of about 18%. Total, 18%, over 2 decades. That's less than 1% per year. You could have gotten a better return in a basic savings account with zero risk and zero headaches. This isn't a story about a great investment. It's a story about 20 years of stagnation.
And here's the real kicker. That 18% is the gross number. That's the fantasy number, before reality sets in. That number doesn't account for 20 years of expenses. Let's just start with inflation. For that $720,000 home to have just kept up with inflation over 20 years, it would need to sell for well over $1 million today. So at $850,000, it was actually a huge loss in real buying power. And that's before we even start subtracting 20 years of property taxes, 20 years of skyrocketing insurance, maintenance costs, and, oh yeah, the cost of that brand new roof, the new AC, and that modern kitchen. When you do the real math, it is highly, highly likely that these sellers walked away from that quick sale having made no real money at all. In fact, they may have even lost money after 2 decades.
Okay, so let's pull it all together. We've talked about the crushing cost increases, the very real human toll, the confusing data, and a case study that shows an apparent profit can be a total illusion. So what's the big takeaway here? What does this all mean? Well, it means the old playbook for Florida real estate is officially obsolete. This is a new game with new rules, and it requires a much more careful, sober look at the reality of the market.
So let's boil it down to the essentials. Here's what you need to know. First, the Florida dream is still alive for some, but it now comes with extreme, non-negotiable financial pressures. Second, and please burn this into your brain, your monthly housing payment is not fixed, even with a fixed-rate mortgage. That escrow account is a variable that can change everything. Third, as we just saw, a paper profit on a home sale can completely disappear once you account for inflation and decades of costs. And finally, you can't talk about the Florida market. It's not one thing. It's a market of haves and have-nots. The perfectly updated, aggressively priced homes are flying off the shelves. Everything else? It's sitting.
And that leaves us with one last big philosophical question to think about. For generations, Americans have been taught to see their home as their #1 financial asset, the main way to build wealth. But in a market like this, a volatile place where you can own a prime piece of real estate for 20 years and end up with no real financial gain, maybe we need to rethink that. Maybe we need to ask ourselves, how should we define the true value of a home? Is it just about the potential for profit, or is its real value found somewhere else? In the stability it provides, the community it connects you to, and the life you build within its walls? That's the tough question that this new Florida market is forcing everyone to confront. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and check out the links in the description if you're looking for a real estate agent in your market or you need life insurance. My team and I can help you anywhere nationwide.